There we go.
We made it.
We
Hey,
made
Sean.
it.
Welcome back to the DFI podcast. Happy Wednesday, Sean.
Happy Wednesday. It's a nice day here. See the sun.
Good. I need to get back out there to San Francisco. I miss that town. How are things in San Francisco, by the way?
Things are good. Things are getting better. I will say the interest in AI has caused a lot of people to move here. Things are definitely getting better. The government is trending in the right direction with not letting people steal and get away with, break into cars and get away with it, or steal from stores and get away with it. You're still seeing that. Homeless population is still a problem. We need to figure out a way to help those people. But yeah, overall, there's a lot of energy here. Hearing a lot of people building in-person companies, specifically in AI here. So meeting a lot of cool AI people, as we're in decentralized AI. So that's always, it's a good place to be for building a decentralized AI company. I will say that.
Good. Well, when we're about to take over, make sure they put me and you on the good list.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, speaking of being on the good list, being on the bad list, our good friend Sam Bankman-Fried had not the best week last week. It sounds like some news came out
Good fresh
for him.
Oh, can you imagine what it would have been like being friends with him? They're probably just chilling in resorts, flying private planes all the time. I guess he and his friends were always hopped up on speed, but otherwise, seems like they lived a good life.
Yeah, for the time they had it, that's a lot of
yeah, exactly.
That's a lot of capital. So he's got what? He's got a sentence now, and he's going to be in prison for 20-ish years. Is that right?
25 years. Woo!
Wow.
I think it's the second longest prison sentence for a white collar, fraud kind of case. And I think the first one belongs to Bernie Madoff. So in terms of what, I think it's a pretty good punishment. I think the prosecutors are going for 40 to 50 years, but I think at that point it's all the same, 25, 40,
Yeah.
Do
you think it sets an example for other people in the industry? Hey, check yourself a bit before you go crazy?
Yeah, I mean,
taking advantage
you'd
of
have thought that
funds,
the Bernie Madoff didn't happen that long ago. I mean, I guess it's been long enough now where if you're in your 20s, you don't really remember. If you're in your early 30s, you don't really remember what the Bernie Madoff thing was, right? But so I guess, every once in a while you get someone who's like, oh, let me try to commit fraud, let me try to break the system, etc. And then they get caught and then get sent to jail. And it's I think it's a good reminder. People shouldn't need a reminder to do it anyway, right? I mean, what he did was extremely unethical and broke the law at the same time, right? And I'm not sure why why someone needs a reminder, but I think it's good for the industry. It's good for everyone to see SBF go to jail, and hopefully he spends all 25 years in prison.
Well, so that was my next question is, do you think there's any possibility if he was his parents were deeply involved in the Democratic Party, they were sort of allegedly helping manage donors and super PACs for the party, is there any possibility of him getting a parole with Biden before Biden goes out of office, whenever Biden goes out of office?
My understanding is that there is no option for parole in federal cases. We have to Google this, but that's my understanding of the case. But he could, based on good behavior and other things, spend as little as 12 and a half to 13 years in jail. But I don't know if he can spend less until Biden, pardons him, which is not going to happen. And I don't think any politician is stupid enough. You can always get the next, billionaire to give money to your, to build super PACs. But I don't think anyone is stupid enough to be yeah, let's go on a mission to try to go get SBF freed because he used to donate money. Because even his parents, the money came from him, and now he has no money. His assets were taken or frozen or whatever. And so, what does he have left to offer to the Democratic Party? I don't think there is anything, right? Plus, why would you as a politician attach your name to SBF? Yeah, I don't know. I think there was I mean, there's obviously a small movement of people who are very close to him trying to get him, we're trying to get the judge to give him 5 years in prison or something really short and ridiculous. But yeah, I don't think the general, public is going to go for that. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
No, it's good. I hope he does serve his sentence. I think it's really important for the industry that we all sort of people that break the law suffer consequences in that way. I was just doing some research. It looks like this guy Mike Milken, who was a junk bond king that went to jail for a long time for white collar felonies back in the 90s, did get a pardon. It looks like through either Clinton or what was his name? Bush. However, Madoff did not get a pardon, and also Elizabeth Holmes did not get a pardon. It seems like as well. So there's no guarantee. It seems like that he will get a pardon. But who
I
knows how
think
those
it's like
politics
less
play
and
out?
less the public is okay with white collar criminals getting pardons. Like, I don't think, yeah, I don't think it's gonna happen. But who knows? Though I will say Elizabeth Holmes got 11 and a half years or something like that. Like it's not on the scale of 25. She also, for the record, I'm glad she went to jail, but I don't think her, and the law seems to agree that what she did was as bad as what SBF did, right? Like she was basically trying to defraud sophisticated private investors, which, someone should definitely go to jail for. But like he took, retail, like, customers' money, and use it to gamble, which in my opinion is way worse.
Fair points. I agree.
Yeah.
R.I.P. Sam. We'll have him
Yeah.
on the
Hopefully,
pod when he gets out in a few
I will.
decades.
Did you guys? By the way, did you hear? Like, I didn't realize that. Like, when when like FTX was like, oh, we're gonna make everyone whole. Like we like you. By the way, did you know that FTX invested in Anthropic like super early?
Very interesting.
That's
Yeah.
crazy, right? That
What do
like
you think about that?
they lucked out that Anthropic is going to be, well, maybe SBF, saw the future, but like they lucked out that Anthropic is so valuable that they can sell their share and pay all the customers back. Um, like
Yes.
super lucky.
Hugely lucky. Yeah, hugely fortunate. There's a lot of shenanigans there. Like if they had held on to the tokens as opposed to selling them, those tokens would have been worth more. They could have been better able to pay off their debtors and their customers and things like that. But so it's
But
not
like,
all bad,
yeah,
the
yeah,
outcomes.
agreed. But also, it is a little bit because like what I found out, which I didn't, the media was reporting pretty inaccurately, is everyone's being paid back, but in dollars. But like people did, like they put in tokens, right? And so like the price of Solana was, I don't know, 10x, and then price of
You're so
ETH has
right.
gone up like 3x, and price of Bitcoin has gone up like, you know, whatever, 3 4x. So, and I don't know all the other altcoins, right? So, people like, it's like getting your money back, but a year later when the stocks and the crypto markets have boomed and you just like didn't make any money from like, the climb in crypto.
Yes. No, like you're right. There's a narrative, and it's not so surprising because I think Sam gave a lot of money to these media outlets, these journalists, and these institutions that he was an innocent kid that made a mistake. And if we had just waited a little bit longer, all would have been well and it would have all worked out fine. Like
Yeah.
there's this famous investor, Bill Ackman, who tweeted out after Sam tweeted, like, oh, it's like I was trying to do the right thing. I made a mistake. And Bill Ackman wrote, like, I think the kid's telling the truth. The kid, like this young, like juvenile, like they made an honest mistake. And similarly, like, there's like a little bit of like forgiveness like going on with the media. Like if the trade amount did this and they're getting made whole, they're painting a certain picture about it. But I think that picture is a bit more rosy than the people who generally lost a lot of money by giving their funds to FTX.
Yeah, I don't know how, like, I don't know how he's managed to do this. Like, this is crazy that we're talking about a guy who literally stole from his customers, and there are people going to bat for him. Like, what is going on? Like, how much money was he giving away, right? And also, like, got super lucky that the price of crypto has gone up. What if it hadn't gone up? Then what would they have done, right? Like, then would the customers not been made whole, right? Like, I don't know. I feel like, FTX and him lucked out in that sense, but that should not be a pass for his behavior.
That's exactly right. That's actually what the judge said. The judge said if you stole money from people, went to gamble on the money, and then were able to make a profit, that doesn't preclude you from having stole the funds effectively. It's not a defense,
Yeah.
which honestly is like huge. Anytime the courts and judicial system sort of stand up for like the law and the morality, and they're not swayed by whatever political motivations, it's so nice to see. It's so refreshing.
Yeah.
Rule of law.
Yeah.
We still have courts that uphold the law, so we can still kind of rest easy there.
Yeah. Yeah. On political prosecution, do you want to talk about the Tornado Cash situation?
Yes, please. Let's talk about it. Yeah.
I
Do we
think
give a little bit of
you
background
think,
or?
yeah, you go to fill in the, I think start with the background because I'm not exactly sure what happened here. I have just a high level understanding. So I think
Thank you. Yes, I'm curious to hear your take on this one. So effectively, these two folk, or these group of three or so guys, these sort of core developers, start an open source project called Tornado Cash, and it's just like open source software. It's on GitHub. You could see it. It's nothing magical. The source code was up for a long time, and they work together for a specific purpose on Ethereum. As everyone knows, in Ethereum, transactions can be traced, and so even though no one knows what the wallet that I own is, how it's tied to me, there's a lot of sophisticated companies like Chainalysis that can follow that transaction and identify me and say most likely this wallet was West, the fund, and people use that for socially beneficial purposes like tracking terrorist funding, illicit finance, things like that. But it could also be used to tamper with people's privacy. People may want to not expose how much money they have. They want to maintain their privacy. They may not want to expose where their money's going. If they're paying someone, they may not want that. They may not want that information to be public. This is effectively how cash has worked for us for
exactly
as long as we've had cash, right? So
exactly.
these developers wrote this software called Tornado Cash. It's a smart contract running on the Ethereum network autonomously, and that smart contract did a very special thing where it took funds from various folks, it mixed it. The term is a mixer. It's a class of contract called mixer, so that it would send back the funds to the individuals, but there would be no way to trace where that value flow occurred specifically. It would lose its ability to be traced in the blockchain. And people have been using this for many years. There was, good amount of volume going through Tornado Cash. It was just a random, part of the ecosystem in Ethereum for people's privacy and perhaps for other purposes. Then I think it was about a year or so ago, these folks, these Dutch developers, two of them here in the U.S., were arrested by their federal agencies, taken into custody. They're still in custody, at least the Dutch person by the name of Alexei Pertsev. And their trial is just getting started this week. They are being charged with helping launder funds for international terrorist groups and intentionally avoiding KYC requirements. So I'll just stop there and see if that lines up with your view of the story, if you have any different view on it.
Yeah, that's exactly my understanding of what happened.
There's a number of nonprofit groups like Coin Center in particular who are kind of coming to their aid, people that are raising a lot of money for the legal defense for these folks. One of the extraordinary things was that these Tornado Cash, this Tornado Cash program was put on the sanctions list for OFAC. OFAC is the Office of Foreign Assets Controls. Typically, you would do this for if there's a sanctioned country like Iran or North Korea, they get put on OFAC if it's like a bad guy in Russia or something like this. But this is the first time that a piece of software has ever been put on the OFAC list. That in itself is being challenged in court. But they're using that to say that these folks in particular, anybody who interacted with this contract, this smart program, is a criminal. This is the first time that code, which was previously treated as free speech, is now being treated as a component in a federal crime in the Dutch courts. So it's a very big change to what responsibilities developers may have, depending on the outcome of these court cases. What do you think, Ishan?
Let's go first. I'm not a fan of this entire prosecution of what's going on here. Like, I think my first opinion is that, this is government overreach. They don't understand how blockchain works. They don't understand how open source software works. There's not much that could have been done here except KYC, which would have stop the entire purpose of Tornado Cash. Now, whether Tornado Cash, something like Tornado Cash in the digital economy like this should be allowed or not, I think is a separate question, right? Because yeah, I mean, even today with cash, like it's not as traceable as credit cards and debit cards, but you still need to, like, the banks still do KYC on their customers, right? So there isn't a thing of like, oh, there's no KYC being done. Like when you're depositing money or you're withdrawing money, at least here in the US, right? In cash, like there is some KYC being done, right? The only time the KYC is not being done is like, you know, somebody gave me some cash because they owed me, like, I bought pizza for them, and then I used that cash, at another place, at another restaurant to pay. I paid with cash, and like no one knows how that cash really got exchanged. But eventually, it rolls up to a bank if somebody wants to deposit, unless it's perpetually being used. So I guess that's the first thing. The second thing is like, yeah, I'm not a big fan of what I consider this like government overreach, and maybe like the government doesn't have anything better to do, so they're going after these developers. I'm hoping that the judges or the judicial system, um, you know, the prosecutors basically lose this in court, right? I don't think that these developers are responsible for other people laundering money. And that being said, I think there's something interesting. They're like, oh, didn't they charge something weird where like, oh, the developers gave themselves like 30% of all the tokens, so it clearly was meant to be, to profit from them, and that's why they weren't really worried about, what was happening in Tornado Cash. What was that about? Do you know?
That's going to be that's going to be a big sticking point. It says the TON or TON token was issued not by Telegram, but by a separate group, even though the Telegram logo was actually, no, let's see. That's not what it was here.
Wait, hold
No,
on.
there were some details. Go ahead.
There's something about the Tornado Cash guys giving themselves 30% of the tokens as like, because they were doing work, right? Of the Tornado Cash tokens or something like that. I don't know. Anyway,
Yes.
that's going to be
You're
interesting.
absolutely right.
Because I think there might be a real story with the prosecutors might be able, I don't know if it's a judge or a jury, right? But the prosecutors might be able to convince someone, that like having a lot of tokens incentivized them to like look away from, what was happening, even though those guys don't have the keys, right? They couldn't control anything that's happening on the network, right? So I'm not exactly, yeah. So I don't know how this is going to play out. Yeah. So I'm generally not a fan of what's going on. And to me, it just sounds like, they're not going after real criminals, but they want to attack. The blockchain has become, a place where all countries in the world want to attack it politically because they see governments see their grip weakening on the economy instead of it being like an innovation tool. And I think that the governments, the more than lack of a killer app or anything in blockchain, I think the governments have the most power to shut down the entire blockchain economy.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I hate to say it, but it's still true. Like, they still have so much influence on the on-ramps in the physical world to arrest people, even though like we live in these digital states and it's all very ethereal, like all the stuff that we're doing. There's still real world consequences if the government choose to. And then hopefully we have the court system that can kind of like maintain, especially like the Constitution, like freedom of speech and these like kind of core values could be upheld. But that's a lot of power. I mean, for a software product, like, I mean, Bitcoin on itself is immensely powerful. This gets back to like one of the important things of like Satoshi Nakamoto, because Satoshi Nakamoto is an anonymous person or persons. It's very difficult to go after an individual and stop an autonomous network. But then again, like, like if you have a system like Tornado Cash that can create these untraceable transactions that even like the most sophisticated government agencies cannot like, crack follow the tracing, that's a massive open power for people to have against governments. And so does the government try to make an example out of Alexei to prevent other folks from trying to, create these sorts of projects in the future? That's what they did with Silk Road and Ross Ulbricht. They just like lock them up for a couple decades, but hopefully not. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, in this case, I'm not like I don't like what the government's doing, but in general, I think there's been like the swing on a pendulum on like, intellectuals, like it's like, oh, the government is bad and the government doesn't do anything and the government wastes all this money, and the government does not do all those things, right? Like the government in general is not bad. And can you imagine, like, I mean, we just had a conversation like with someone else where like it's like, oh, the government isn't doing anything about like theft and burglary here in SF for like 2 years, right? Our district attorney wasn't doing anything, and like the rise in crime happened, right? And not back in that situation, we're looking for the government for answers, right? I don't think that, like, I do think the government, that there's like a place for government to govern us, right? I just think that like it's kind of expanded on services which most are needed, right? Like social services, social security, Medicare, Medicaid. These are things that are all good. Food stamps, one of the great programs. NASA, probably the highest ROI out of any government agency in the United States and the US government, right? So these are all good government programs. I think specifically what I'm talking about is political persecution because you don't like the idea, right? So this is less government and more politics, which there is like a difference between like government institutions and politics. So I think that's where I don't like, where like the SEC and the U.S. government does not like crypto and blockchain right now, right? Under the Democrats and Biden administration, because which is funny because like in the pre FTX they loved it, right? Like they were like woohoo, like pro crypto everything. Right now they're like the exact opposite. So yeah,
You're right.
that's
There hasn't
specifically
been
what I'm talking about. Yeah.
no, you're the atmosphere is definitely cool. I haven't heard as much about like CBDC's conversations federally in the U.S. Do you think that like the two are correlated, or maybe
I
like
think
is it out of fashion?
they will be, but it's like too far out. I think the CBDC in the U.S. is still under research at the Fed, so like
Okay.
the Fed is still doing a lot of research, and I don't think we'll be seeing anything until at the end of the decade at the earliest. So yeah, especially with the release of Fed now, which is completely different. But yeah, so but yeah, I think the really sticky part here that's scary is like, oh, let's make software, like you can make software on that list. You can put software on that list, right? Like that's scary.
Yes, that's extremely scary. What if they said like only approved AI is allowed to be developed and
Yeah,
unapproved AI is illegal? Like that just changes the entire interpretation of our legal system and freedom of speech and freedom of expression.
I agree. And also like it makes no sense. Like it's the equivalent of putting like a book on the list, right? Like,
Very much.
yeah.
So that was the like one of my favorite things. There's this conference called MCon that happens in Denver every so often. It's like Meta Cartel and Old Dow, and they had a shirt and they had printed out the source code to Tornado Cash on the shirt, and it said this shirt is illegal, but it was art on a shirt, and it was trying to make the point like what a book, a T-shirt, a piece of art, like where do you draw these lines? It's a slippery slope. But there were two other articles that you added related to AI. Both are super interesting. Both the merger. Oh, that's cool. I gotta get rid of that. That's so fun. The merger and the hardware one.
Fetch AI, Ocean Protocol, and Singularity Net had proposed a merger in their tokens to create a $7.5 billion market cap, token economy, which is basically to make decentralized AI, like like to combine projects, so like the entire like decentralized AI flow like can be done in one place, right? And so I don't know what the new project will be called. Oh, it's going to be called Super Intelligence Alliance, or SIA. And the market value of this merged tokens will be 7.5 billion. And they're doing this to make decentralized AI more, like more, I guess, more useful, more powerful, more relevant. And so the Fetch community said yes with a 99.8% vote, right? And then the Ocean Protocol had already said yes. And the three projects, like the new project's goal is to do research on AGI, right, or artificial general intelligence, and develop it so it's not controlled by any particular party with biased interests. The founder and CEO of Singularity.net, Dr. Ben Gortzel, said they should be rolled out in an open, democratized, and decentralized way. Um, I guess my first question for you, Wes, is what do you think of, like, have you seen token mergers before? Like, this is kind of cool. Like, is this something that's new? Did I miss it? Or what do you think about, like, just a bunch of groups merging tokens?
No, it's definitely not the first major token merger. Did you ever hear about the Faye and Rari merger a couple years ago?
Oh, yeah, I did hear about that.
Which is a hilarious name. Faye
Yeah, I know,
Protocol,
right?
Rari Protocol. I
I
love
know,
it.
right?
It's a great name. No, I think there were some mixed outcomes with that one in particular, partly because it was a stable coin similar to like Terra and Luna, like a stable
Mm-hmm.
coin and a generative coin. And the market, they just didn't survive the market downturn. I don't know. I mean, I'm a little bit bearish on it because, like, if the products themselves were had great product market fit on their own, they could always partner together, and the users could use both like seamlessly. And most of those projects would build integrations with their partner projects naturally. I'm just a little skeptical about like why they would do it, why they would need to merge tokens. Are you seeing any reason there's like a unique like value behind merger there they couldn't
Yeah,
have had otherwise?
I'm guessing that it was because they did different stuff. And they did different stuff in the decentralized AI, and they want to build a protocol or a product that is like end to end without having to do partnerships. And because, like, I think it probably helps the community more if there's, instead of competing on like different products, you're able to like put it into one. So like for example, Ocean Protocol is more focused on data, and Fetch AI is more about deploying AI agents. And so you could imagine that there's like, a natural, like, they're building developer tools. So there's like a natural, and I don't know what Singularity Net does. I assume it's an NFT thing. Actually, I don't know. Uh, Sounds like they're doing research. So let me check. Oh yeah, they let anyone create, share, and monetize AI services at scale. I don't know what that means. So yeah, but I know what Ocean Protocol and Fetch AI do. And it makes sense. Like, it almost seems like a merger of like a company, or like some company buying another company, because like they have a product that another, that another company has a product that they don't have. So that's what it looks like to me. It's interesting. Like, people get excited about, like, obviously $1 billion market caps is really high, but like Nvidia is like $1 trillion market cap. So to be fair, that's a chip company and they have high growth and etc. So doesn't stock markets don't work the same as crypto markets, but yeah, I think it's cool that I hadn't like properly seen this before. So to me, this was pretty new. So I thought this was cool. But yeah, in general, I tend to agree that, like, if you don't have product market fit, it seems like this is why you would do it, because it gives you more, uh, a higher valuation, and just more people that you can interact with, more people in your community.
Yeah, and I think I could be much more on board with it for traditional Web 2 companies when you have like IP issues to protect, or you have like engineering staff you want to collaborate more closely together. There's a slightly different model. Like the Graph protocol, the Graph token and its community have taken the approach of heavily funding other companies to like multi-million dollar grants, like multi-year grants, 10, $15 million grants to research and engineering firms that build out components of their product. So you can have economically aligned outcomes with other companies in those ways that are deep and substantial, like token grants, effectively, without necessarily merging. Although I don't want to be, totally pessimistic on it. We'll
Yeah.
see how it goes. We'll see what they can
We'll see.
build.
I haven't seen this, so I thought it was interesting. There's also, like, it looks like consolidation happening in decentralized AI, which I'm not surprised, because, like, you can't have like 500 projects doing the same thing. So like, I think actually, I think over the next 3-4 years, you will see like, some protocols die. Hopefully not us. But some protocols die, and like some mergers happen. And one thing that could be interesting that I did not think about is like, what if it's like a way to do an acqui-hire but in a crypto way, like
For the
merged
employee or like the
essentially open
employees of
source
the
developer
project.
teams, right? Yeah, or like merge teams or merge open source developer teams or something like that.
It's entirely possible. No, it's a good point. I mean, it could. We should go back and read some of the forum posts on these folks, because I'm sure the nice thing is a lot of this stuff would be debated out in the public, and especially in these governance forums issues, people get very passionate and opinionated both directions. So there's probably like a good like the other side of the argument. But you're right, that could absolutely be the case. Bring folks together. There's these projects have like full-time engineers. Bring them together more closely, align them financially, see what happens.
Yeah, and then I think that's just something interesting that came up on my desk this week. And then the other thing is, um, I thought this was a little bit. So there was an article in CoinDesk, and I think it was an opinion article or something. But basically, they're like, "Oh, crypto AI projects would need to buy all the chips in the entire world that Nvidia makes to work their entire cap to meet their ambitions." And I felt that this piece just didn't get the point of what's really happening. So I think like they're like, oh, like, so there are 4 levels of the AI stack, right? There's like the chips, then there is the infrastructure, then there is the models, and then there's the applications. And this article is like, oh, there were 550,000 Nvidia H100s shipped last year, right? And each of those chips are like, I don't know, $30,000-$40,000. And so the entire market cap of all the AI companies are just worth basically the chips that Nvidia shipped. And so therefore, like, decentralized AI is not is not like doing that well. I think it was the implication from the article. And one thing that was interesting is that it was, this article is written from a point of perspective of like, first of all, there's only one type of chip, right? They only talk about the Nvidia H100. I think that's like the math on that is like $21.6 billion worth of chips, which is the market cap, is a larger market cap than all the AI chains right now. But decentralized AI is so new. Most of us haven't launched any like protocol, right? Like there's no, it's still in DevNet or testnet. So it doesn't take into account for that. Then there are lots of different types of GPUs. So NVIDIA H100 was the one that NVIDIA released last year, right? Now NVIDIA is releasing I think now they have, what is it? The NVIDIA B100, is it? The B100, B200 that they introduced at GTC earlier this year, right? That was like last month. And there's going to be more in GPUs, right? There's also a whole bunch of other GPUs that NVIDIA has released over the last 5-6 years, both server grade and consumer grade GPUs that can be used. And there are other companies building GPUs. Like NVIDIA's market share is like 93%. They might peak at 95 over the next year, but like they're not going to go to 100%, right? And everyone is now building their own GPUs. So I felt like this, CoinDesk published this, but this was basically like a misdirect on what's happening in decentralized AI. And then finally, the last point to this is that they're only talking about the chips, but the chips are one part of the tech stack, and it's only one place where there's value generation, right? There's a lot of value generation in infrastructure and how you do things in the models that are being built, which I guess is a proxy for the chips. And then the application layer, but the application layer, like once you're using a model that's been built, you can just keep building applications on top of it. So yeah, it was an interesting piece to see in a crypto native news article in a news media company that seemed to make decentralized AI look bad, but do it in a way that didn't really make sense.
Hmm. They didn't have the full story. No, I agree. There's sensationalism going on, trying to get the right headline to attract attention, kind of going counter to the narrative in some sense. But you're
Yeah.
right. There's so much hardware going out there. What is the state of on that point of Nvidia's dominance right now? Could Intel challenge them, or there startups that are going to come in their place, or are they just going to be the U.S. national steel of GPUs for the next 100 years?
Yeah, I mean, like there's Google made something called the tensor processing unit a long time ago. TPU. It is specific. It's specifically meant for like AI training and inference workloads, right? So Google uses that internally. They also make it available in GCP. Then the guy who built the original TPU started this company called Grok, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not the same as the Twitter Grok, but like they call it an LPU, language processing unit. It's apparently makes, I don't, if I remember correctly, it's like 10x or 50x or 100x faster than GPUs do by using off the shelf components because it's architected in a different way. I'm sure, NVIDIA will catch up, but, there is that. Then AMD has been making GPUs, and their GPUs are actually quite good. The problem with the AMD GPUs are not the actual hardware; it is the fact that like NVIDIA has been building CUDA, which is the software stack on top of the GPUs for a really long time. They saw the future, and AMD is just catching up, and their equivalent to CUDA is not that good, right? So it's not the actual GPU. So and then there are other companies who are building what ASICs are, like Bitcoin ASICs, right?
Yeah, yeah, of course.
Application specific integrated circuits. We will see AI ASICs in the future, right?
That makes sense. Yeah.
Right, like you would expect that, right? I mean, the LPU is basically an AI.
Grok. Yeah.
Grok's LPU is basically an AI ASIC,
I love it.
right? Is another
Okay.
variation of saying that. So I don't think Nvidia will hold its market cap or its dominance in the GPU world, but it is more advanced than the others because of CUDA more than anything else. um and so yeah, that's one. And the second thing is that, like, it was only talking about like the latest generation of the hardware, but one thing, there's a lot of research happening in AI is like, first of all, unless you're building like the largest of the largest foundational models, you don't need the largest, the most powerful GPUs. You can run them on smaller GPUs. And so like it completely misses the point of like, okay, there are a lot more GPUs in the world than just the H100s, and we can use that for training or inference of AI models.
Completely agree. What about all these latent home GPUs that are sitting around in
Yeah.
gamers' CPUs? Is anyone taking advantage of those yet? Is there any potential for those to help with training?
Yeah, there's people like us. There's competition in the space that are taking advantage of that. I will
Very
say
good.
that only the people with it's a lot easier to take advantage of people's home machines for inference than it is for training because of network overhead, actually, more than computation overhead.
Oh yeah,
And
that's right.
so, like if I have an Xbox sitting at home, it's a lot easier to use that for inference. That'll change over time, right? Technology always gets better. You see bandwidth in general, at least in America, increase, 20% year over year. So give or take. So like, that gets better. And so but yeah, that I think in general, like you will see like a more democratized version of AI. We will see more and more people experimenting on different chips, which is a good thing, right? And then hopefully we will see Nvidia's not being as dominant in the chip market in the next 3 to 5 years. Otherwise, they can control who builds AI models through their through CUDA, right? Through their software stack. So yeah,
A lot of power. The future is bright.
yeah,
Don't give up yet.
exactly. The future
But
is
if you live
bright.
in San Francisco, if you don't live in San Francisco yet, you need to move to San Francisco.
If you're working in AI, come to San Francisco.
Come join in the fun.
You know what's weird? I think like 90 some percent, 80 or 90% of YCs, like they just had their demo day last week or 2 weeks ago, and 80 to 90% of their companies are like doing something in AI, either at the application level or at the model level or at the infrastructure level. And it was insane. Like, everyone's here doing AI.
That's a really interesting insight because I don't know how many people get to go to the demo days or are plugged into that. Is that because AI is just becoming like a standard piece of plumbing for anyone that's building innovative software these days, or some other
I
reason?
think so. I think so. I think it's one that, and I think people like, technologists like us just get super excited about new technology and what user experiences can you create. Like, think Airbnb, they created an entire new industry of people renting out their home, right? And like, that's cool. Like, everyone wants to create a new industry. Not a lot of people want to go and fix the current industry, which, that's not true. Also, there are a lot of people doing that, but like, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like there's
Yeah.
two types of AI companies, right? There's one that is built bringing a whole new experience that didn't exist before AI, and then there's like people who are like just making, I don't want to say just, they're people who are improving the current apps and ecosystem of the things that are done today using AI. So there's like, and I think between the two of those groups, like, you can just build any sort of AI company, right? And so I think that's why YC has so many companies using AI. Um, Also because it helps with fundraising. I think AI companies got like a 20% premium in the pre-seed round or something like that, seed round, right? So yeah,
We all have to play the game. We don't have to hate the
exactly.
players, but we have to play the game. All right. Hey, Sean, this is a pleasure as always, man. Should we call it a day?
Yes, let's do it.
All right. Peace out. Success. We'll see you next time,
Yes,
man.
sir.
Bye. And we're up.